October 20th, where we invited people to an in-person presentation, and then we also recorded it, streamed it live, and offered up real-time feedback or questions. And then we also recorded it and have put that on the web page, which I put out of order here. But the city, so we have a bridge plan web page. It lives on the city's website. On the homepage of the website, we have this input button down here, directing people to provide input on the bridge plan, and it directs people to the bridge plan web page, where you can find all the documents. You can find the schedule of meetings, and you can read through those documents, what's being proposed, and then email any comments or support or concerns to me, and then I'm sharing that with the committee. And we haven't had a ton of comments. We did not have any folks show up in person to the public meeting. It wasn't a huge surprise, a little disappointing, but then we had just 9 people streamed it that night. But I do think we've had a good number of folks who've watched it. Hopefully all of you have watched it. And so that comes from our October 20th public meeting, and that really kicked off our engagement. And so now we're pushing it out there to the public to provide input, and this is part of that as well. People will be able to watch this workshop, get additional information. Hopefully we drill down a little bit further, especially into some of the land use and urban growth recommendations, so people can learn a little bit more. With some changes to the timeline for adoption, which I'll get to at the end, what I would like to do, and we can discuss this at the end further, but is create a hard stop for public input that lines up with this going to adoption by the Planning Commission. And once I think it's good to put a good deadline for folks to provide their comments, and then we'll know, okay, we've gotten the comments we're going to get. We're going to present this for adoption to the Planning Commission. And then from that point, we would go into hopefully between now and then, we will have a more polished document. What we have is very raw, as you saw, if you looked into any of the documents. It's basically just raw text. So we want to make it more appealing and maybe digestible to the public. So that'll be a goal over the next month as well. We've also, with the help of Commissioner Dagenhart and Wild, we have reached out to all of our review partners. We've had our marketing and community relations team posting, posting it on the website, posting it on social media. And Chris, if you want to add anything, we've reached out to neighborhood groups. We've reached out to different professional networks, local agencies, and boards. And asked them to share it. And I've gotten some feedback from folks who said, hey, this got added to our newsletter, or we got this pushed out. Chris, do you want to add anything to that about our?
I don't have anything in particular to add. If anybody has any questions or any comments about the audiences that we pushed out specifically, you see the list that's shown on the left-hand side of the screen right now. We have had a handful of responses from those people, or from contacts that have seen the notification and actually reviewed some of the documentation, and all of it has been positive.
So when I talked about the deadline for input, what I am thinking is November 30th, somewhere around that. That gives us a week to prepare for the Planning Commission meeting on December 8th, which will be the adoption night, consideration for adoption. So between now and then, it would be great if members of the commission could help us in pushing it out and thinking about, there's this group of people I know, or there's this neighborhood group, or these individuals that would be really interested in this and may have some good thoughts. What I will facilitate that. Chris has done a good job putting together a nice introduction email. I plan to do more of that now that I'm back, and really take the next couple of weeks to continue to push it out there to get feedback. And so if you think of something, feel free to share the emails that have been generated, or reach out to me and say, hey, can you send it to these people? Okay, so moving on to the elements, what I'm going to focus on, if you've watched the presentation already, if you've reviewed any of the documents, I'm just going to focus on the proposed modifications. I'm not going to focus on the existing language as much. And so I'm going to go through each element, starting with urban growth. And very simply, we introduced some language about urban neighborhoods. That's also covered in our land use in more detail. But the idea is adding additional language that supports the existing current recommendation to support infill. And so how do we support infill? This is one of the ways. And I'll get into the details of what that means, urban neighborhood zoning. So the state law for annexation also changed between when the previous plan was written and the current and our today. And so we're acknowledging that annexation is no longer done by just the city going out and taking it or adding to its city limits. It's done by petition from the property owners. We talk about encouraging property owners, especially in these enclaves or donut holes, reaching out to them, incentivizing them to come into the city in order to provide more efficient services. So if we have city limits that start and stop and start again, it's not as efficient with our service provisions. We also referenced a de-annexation policy, which was adopted, I believe, by resolution by the City Commission a couple of years ago, and it lays out criteria that if you have a property that meets that criteria, then you are eligible for consideration for de-annexation. And so that policy guides decision making, and we've referenced it here. Any questions on urban growth? Please, take a look at that element in detail. It deals with utilities, water and sewer a good bit in particular. I think it'll be educational, and it'll be really important when you consider annexations. Under land use, this is just kind of a list. I'll break these down into more detail. The first is promoting good public improvements that support quality private development. And so we basically have a list of the types of improvements to the right-of-way that creates a quality experience, improves walkability, improves quality of life. If you make those types of public investments, then we can hold a higher standard to our private development as well. So ideas of different design requirements, design standards, form-based coding, which is slightly different from, or significantly different from zoning, which just really focuses on land use. We could look at introducing form-based codes, which focuses on form and how buildings interface with the public right-of-way. But we got to start by providing a quality experience and environment in the public. And so we've called that out. Zoning code changes that have been called out. We reference this urban residential zoning. And so you'll see this reference to missing middle housing. Essentially what we are proposing to do is create a zoning district for the urban core, the neighborhoods right around downtown, where we currently have a mix of single family homes and multifamily homes that are complementary to one another. It exists because the zoning was allowed for multifamily years ago. And as that started to develop, neighborhoods pushed back against it. There's fraternity houses and student housing, and there were some issues with it basically changing in character. And so they pushed back. What they pushed back to was maybe an overstep. And now they've gone to this low density single family zoning, which is not compatible with urban neighborhoods. So what we're proposing is that, hey, how do we write a zoning district in a way that essentially captures what we have today and allows for some multifamily that's complementary to single family so they can live side by side. We provide a variety of housing types at different income levels, but we have some some harmony within our neighborhoods. And I think we achieved that already, but the way it is today, it's all legal non-conforming. We want to make it legal conforming. So that would involve some design standards and different area requirements. So taking our traditional neighborhoods as they are today and essentially writing that into code. So 50 by 150 lots, shorter setbacks, maybe 10 feet, 15-foot front setbacks, 5 foot, 7.5 foot side setbacks. And then having, duplexes, quadplexes, triplexes side by side with single family, but not distinguishable really from each other as far as how they greet the street. So front porches, parking in the rear off the alley, things like that make good neighbors. And then also transitioning to kind of more of a townhouse type of residential just outside of the historic district in our outside the central business district in our B3. And there's a lot of design detail in there, but that's essentially what we're aiming at. Are there any questions about that? Any comments?
I just have one, and it was probably already addressed in a past meeting that I made. But is that zoning and overlay zoning, or can that also be can someone choose that particular zoning out on Carroll Creek or Boones Creek?
So that's a great question. And that would be tackled when we actually write this and implement it. My initial thoughts are that it would primarily be, within a radius of a half mile, probably a half mile around downtown, those neighborhoods. It's not going to be a perfect circle, but we know kind of the denser, older traditional neighborhoods that were laid out in the early 1900s. Those are the neighborhoods that I have in mind. Now, how it works would be an overlay certainly seems to be a good option. So the overlay would either be over those whole areas or overlays along certain neighborhood feeder streets that have a little bit higher volume of traffic. And if you're in that overlay, the idea is that you would get a density bonus if you met certain design criteria. So if you build something new, or if you have an existing house that you want to divide and it has these qualities of a single family traditional neighborhood, front porches and the right ratio of height and width, how it fits on a lot that provides parking on or off street, but in the rear. So it's not, parking lots in the front yard. If you meet all those design standards, then you would get a density bonus. So you could go from single family to duplex, triplex, quadplex.
Okay.
The only way I think we can implement that is through an overlay. I could be wrong, but that's my initial understanding based on state law, is that to have those kind of standards with design, it can't be attached to your base zoning. It has to be attached to an overlay.
Okay.
I
appreciate you addressing that.
That's the approach.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, you're welcome. Good question. And Whitney, who I introduced earlier, has some experience with form-based codes and things like this. I've brought her in the loop on this, and so we may be having some good dialogue about how to actually get to the coding of all this. So it's and this is really a goal. This is a priority for early 2021. Another zoning code change that we've worked in here is about really conserving our rural areas, and that's one of the beauties of our region, and we want to preserve that. And so there's a lot in here, not just about open space and conservation, but also about protecting ridge lines and creeks, and some of the tools we can use to achieve that. And so that introduces kind of a new concept. We've always said, low density residential is appropriate on the far reaches, but there may be some areas around some of our larger parks, or really on the way to Jonesboro, that whole area, that we want to do more than just say, oh, this can be developed into a bunch of, high density or medium density single family homes or patio homes. We may want to take another step there and say, we want very low density, more agricultural, rural, conservation, open space. And then this also could roll into, or we may want to consider some additional language. This just popped in my head, about the use of our open space requirement in our RP district. That's been something that's popped up through the years with the Planning Commission. We've never taken any action on it. It continues to come up. We have developers that just really throw in open space as an afterthought. It doesn't have any real intended use. There's, real opportunities to create nature trails or gardens, or even just natural areas that are actually, developed, I'll say, to some type of standard that would be appropriate for providing habitat. And so we want to just have a higher quality outcome with our open space. We make reference to this push to make Johnson City known for its natural assets and leveraging outdoor recreation. That falls right in line with our economic development efforts. And so we've got some language in here about that. References private campgrounds. That's been something that's been discussed through the years. And public campgrounds are referenced in here as well. Any comments on that? Any thoughts? Okay. Another update was to our glossary of terms. There's an existing glossary of terms in the land use element. We've added these three. And so complete streets, which I mentioned early on about improved public investment, that's really about achieving complete streets, which are streets that are designed to accommodate all users, not just cars. Road diet, that is often part of achieving or improving a roadway to make it a complete street, is to reduce from a 4-lane or 5-lane road that is typically a 4-lane road, and reducing it to a 3-lane road with a center turn lane and bike lanes on either side, which provide safe travel lanes for cyclists, but also create an extra buffer for sidewalks. So it improves both safety for bicycles and pedestrians, and also improves safety for motorists as well. There's less conflict, less changing lanes around folks, less being impeded by folks who are turning, and because all that movement goes into the center lane. Transect, Knob Creek is one area that comes to mind. That'd be a great location for a road diet. Transect, this is a concept in planning that we'd like to lean on more, where we have more defined. This goes back to that open space and conservation, that on the edges of the city are natural zones or our rural zones. We want to have densities that are appropriate and that help preserve that character. And so we know the character of these different transects or these different zones, and what those zones should entail. And so that helps to define that in our glossary. We also modified some of the language, and this probably could use a little work. This was done early on in the process, but for those of you, we have this future land use map, which we refer to when we're looking at annexations and assigning the zoning for annexations or looking at rezonings. We look at our proposed future land use map, and it's very vague. It has this broad sweeping residential. Well, residential can be a single family house or a 900 unit apartment. So it doesn't give us a whole lot of detail, which are we talking about low density, high density, medium density. So we've added some language in here that helps to clarify that. The one thing I noticed that's missing is we haven't provided, it goes from rural to medium density. while that is better than what it said before, we do need low density residential in there. So we have rural, low density, medium density, and high density, and where those types of classifications are appropriate. So then we
Hey,
have
Matt.
a better quality. What's that?
How would you define low density, just out of curiosity?
Any, quarter acre or less. I mean, I would say, yeah, probably quarter acre. I mean, I'm sorry, quarter acre or more.
Quarter acre or more, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, sir.
So the idea of we take this language, this improved classifications, and then we work on our map, and we take these classifications and we apply them on the map. We started that process late summer with Preston and Asong and I looking at our map. We wrote the city out into quadrants, and we looked at a finer level to say, okay, this node, this intersection here has potential to develop. The areas around it maybe should be potential to develop small neighborhood commercial at a node of an intersection. Then around that, possibly multifamily, and further out, different densities of residential. And so just wanted to paint with a finer brush there. When we changed the scope of the bridge plan to include all elements, we decided to back off trying to update the future land use map as part of this. But what we'd like to do is at least update the language for the classifications, and then come back and update the future land use map at a later time. Okay, so that's it for land use. Moving into the transportation. Transportation is broken up into the sidewalk plan, bicycle, major thoroughfare, and transit. The key things here with transportation in general is increased review by the Planning Commission. This is something that the committee felt strongly about and is within the purview of the Planning Commission as granted the authority by state statute. This will be something that will probably be heavily discussed once this reaches the city commission, and it's something we'll need to be strategic about, and staff will definitely be relying on the Planning Commission's recommendation on this to facilitate the conversation that we know we're going to have. So that would be Public Works having a list of their proposed sidewalk projects for the upcoming year, and that budget of projects or those budgeted projects would then be presented to either the long range planning committee or the Planning Commission as a whole. Some entity related to the Planning Commission would review that and put eyes on it, make sure those proposed projects are in alignment with the comprehensive plan. There's a priority scoring system that is already in our comprehensive plan that gives us a grading system that directs where these investments should go. And so this is just another set of eyes of people who represent the public, as you do, appointed officials who would be giving a little more oversight on these proposed projects. That and some additional language about meeting ADA standards and consistency with our crosswalks across the city.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
One other question on that, on the sidewalk plan. This is, I don't know the answer to this, and I hope you do. If the city chose to do a capital improvement program for sidewalks and road, like from the interstate on North State of Franklin down to Oakland, if we did a sidewalk plan, do we as the city have the ability to charge those business owners for just the sidewalk portion, or is that still follow under our budget?
No, yeah. So if it's part of a development, they have to put it in. If it's just us doing a project, then the city pays for it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Now I do, I mentioned here this fee system for neighborhoods. There are neighborhoods. This came from Phil, basically devising a way. We don't have what that system would be, but the idea is that a neighborhood comes to the city, says, hey, we're this neighborhood built in the 70s, and they didn't build, we have really wide streets, but no sidewalks. We no longer feel it's safe for us to walk in the street in lieu of having sidewalks. We want the city to put in sidewalks. Well, if that neighborhood does not score well on our priority scoring system, then this fee system would be some other alternative that they could seek if they were able to raise funds to help offset some of that expense. So it's just maybe some way to kind of handle some of these public requests we get. The bikeway and greenway plan, the major recommendation coming out of this is to fund and draft an actual detailed bicycle and master plan for the entire city. We have, this very, kind of minor set of recommendations, some that have been followed, some that haven't. But for those of us in the planning world that have, worked with other cities that have developed these plans, or worked with consulting groups that do this type of active transportation planning, we know the value in the best practices and the types of standards that we would want to follow or achieve in developing a master plan. And considering where Johnson City is in terms of bicycle and pedestrian friendliness, especially on the bicycle side, a lot of work needs to be done. And so we need a foundation document that's going to guide those investments. And so that's certainly needed. Not only do those plans just talk about infrastructure, but they also really talk about shifting the culture and a mindset that involves, education and awareness, and encouraging certain, businesses to support bicycle culture, and something that can be celebrated by the entire community. And so a full court press for bicycle improvement is essentially what's been recommended. For a major thoroughfare plan, again, the review, a lot of this crosses over with sidewalks and bicycle greenway, and the road diets that were mentioned. But the biggest thing would be, again, the biggest change would be that there would be a review of the city's proposed capital improvements, what roads are going to be improved, connecting what neighborhoods to what commercial areas, and what are the priorities for that, and having the Planning Commission review that.
And
Yes.
that's kind of this major thoroughfare is kind of the second time that we've talked about adding us in as a layer of approval. Is there, I'm asking this out of ignorance, has there historically been an issue with setting those priorities?
Has there been an issue taken by the Planning Commission, some concerns about the priorities?
Well, whoever takes the issue, I assume ultimately the city commission would be the one to express the concern.
Yeah, so City Commission is the sole body that would approve that budget for these projects. And so, yeah, this would just be another set of eyes by folks that have been appointed to guide the development of the city. And so I think this is an effort for the Planning Commission to kind of take their rightful place in the process.
But again, historically, have there been concerns about the appropriate departments setting the appropriate priorities once budgeted?
I can't speak to that.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Okay, any other comments on transportation? Oh, one other comment, the transit plan, which is also falls under transportation, was already rewritten and adopted in 2017. That was led by the MPTO. And so there's no need to go back into that one as part of this bridge plan. We've got an existing, we've got that covered. So under economic development, one thing I've added that has not been discussed at the by the Bridge Plan Committee is reference to the City Commission's strategic plan. And so if you saw the paper yesterday, article came out talking about the City Commission's strategic plan. This was, something that we have not been involved in the conversation of. It very much appears that it would overlap or complement these efforts with the bridge plan. And so we want to make sure we tie those things together. And so there's an opportunity within economic development for certain, but maybe also other elements within the bridge plan where we can make reference to the strategic plan so they have a nice marriage and move forward together. I also have the strategic plan in a later slide that we can discuss it further. But as far as the economic development goals go, they're very much in line with maybe some of the things you read yesterday. But continuing, so basically updating our regional partnerships. The ones that are in the plan are outdated, referencing Bright Ridge and their installation of the high-speed fiber. Making sure that we take a balanced approach, that not just trying to attract large employers, but recognize the small mom and pop shops and what they provide to our local economy. Bringing back the Blight and Beautification Task Force, that's recommended in a couple of places. Again, additional review with the Long Range Committee to make sure we're achieving these goals. Reference to the outdoor recreation. A comment that was provided by the Chamber of Commerce was that we balance our investments. So if we're, say we need to, build all this and they will come. We need to make sure that whoever's going to come and whether or not they are going to come is going to help pay for whatever we built. And then pursuing professional or semi-professional sports. That's kind of a reference to the JC Cardinals and the stadium there, maybe some other opportunities as well. So there's a lot in economic development. Those are just some of the modifications that was based on our committee and our JCDA, NetRep, Chamber of Commerce, Johnson City Commission and Visitors Bureau. All those folks weighed in on this. There's a lot in there, but a lot of it remained unchanged. Housing. We had a really great discussion on housing with our.
Before we move on,
yeah,
is now an appropriate time to just get your thoughts or gather thoughts from the other commissioners on this strategic plan and what that means through
what
the means
I'd like
of
to do
plan, or do we want to do that later? Because I think it warrants a bigger discussion given the scope and resources that would have been put towards the bridge plan, and then all of a sudden you read an article that there's a separate strategic plan set by the city commission.
What I would say is let me quickly go through these other slides because I think that's going to be a lengthy conversation. I don't want to miss out. I will not read through all of these. I'll hit some highlights and ask if there's any questions. We'll just run through these last 4 or 5 we got.
Fair enough. I agree.
Just under housing, again, the blight and beautification came up again here. The idea for missing middle housing that was covered under land use came up again here. Efforts to support code enforcement. I think a lot of this will be addressed if we revitalize the Blight and Beautification Task Force. Really good, healthy conversation with our community development partners on this. Parks and Recreation, not a ton to go into here. We had a really healthy discussion at the committee level, but overall, we're headed in the right direction, we think. But there's some fine tuning that can be done. Fire. Essentially, a new fire plan needs to be written and will be written in conjunction with the planning department as part of the rewrite for the full-scale comp plan in 3-5 years. They're doing a good job. Public facilities, top-notch, doing great work. Not a whole lot to add here. Again, that reporting to the long-range committee or to the planning commission is referenced here. Just again, more oversight. Downtown revitalization. This is a very involved element there's a lot about signage. Most of that's been replaced because we have a wayfinding signage plan now. Issues with parking, we want to address that. We want to have a professional study, just like we talked about the bicycle and Greenway plan. We need to have a parking study and plan. And then continue to do a lot of what we're doing already. There's a lot of good stuff happening in the arts and renovations of buildings and whatnot. Historic zoning continues to be a very active group as well. And just under historic zoning, one of their goals is to establish a merit award. So good projects like the ones shown here, we want to recognize those and reward those and make historic zoning something more that's got a little bit more of a carrot than just the stick. And then recognizing some additional areas that we want to protect. So overarching themes, this will get you where you want to go, Clay. We have a series of either themes that were coming up over and over again throughout these elements, or maybe some gaps in the elements that we wanted to fill. But we created a list of what those issues are or things we wanted to prioritize and really focus on. And so the first one, again, as I've talked about, is this additional review by the Planning Commission. And there's been a lot of conversation about the structure of the Planning Commission, streamlining meetings, utilizing the committees in a more structured way, developing and tracking the goals of the comprehensive plan. And then what I've added here is aligning the efforts with the strategic plan. And so I'll open that up for discussion. Clay, if you want to continue your comments on that and have others comment as well, feel free.
Yeah, I think my comment here, as we went through this exercise, one of the major themes that we recognized was that the 2020 plan, for all the work that had been put into it and the recommendations that were made, had not been adhered to for whatever reason. I can't speak to why that is. I've only been on the Planning Commission for a couple of years. Other folks on this call, staff or commissioners, will probably know better. But one of I think the major theme, and Chris and Stacy, let y'all, and Jamie, let y'all speak up as well, is that if this in fact we have all stacked hands on this bridge plan through the different departments and different folks that we've engaged throughout the city, part of our responsibility is to make sure it happens, and that's only going to happen through accountability and support, maybe moreover, and to have a consensus, a concerted effort that everyone agrees to. I don't think that's going to happen very easily, and I think the fact that a strategic plan came out concurrently from the city commission is ongoing as we're having this meeting is case in point that I think we're going to all have to communicate with the city commission and with staff and as a planning commission to make that happen. It may take a full 5 years for that to happen because it seems like that's a big ship that's got to do a 180-degree turn. But nonetheless, I think that's one of the themes that we recognize, that the plan is good, just hasn't been utilized or followed, and we'd like to support those efforts. If in fact those different parties have said this is where we want to go, we want to support that by bringing everyone together and helping us stay on track. But Chris, do you want to comment further on kind of how that theme emerged among us?
Well, I think what you're saying, I agree with. Where the Planning Commission, with my experience, which is limited, we have been in a more transactional mode and less in a strategic planning and execution mode. And I think that we're trying to reach back and rebalance that a little bit. And we're still in the formative stage of trying to figure out how we can do that. And I think I agree with you also that it's going to take some transition for us to move more toward a model that would be strategic and transactional.
How much of that is just the orientation and the quotation marks training of us as commissioners? To be honest, long range plan hadn't really been on my radar screen. I've kind of depended on staff to raise the appropriate flag whenever, depending on the particular issue we were dealing with.
Well, I think this is where some of the suggestions that have come up for changing the structure of our meetings and all address. I think one of the things that as a member of the Bridge Plan Committee, we determined is we want to be more proactive and less reactive. And we also want to be more strategic in nature rather than just being a rubber stamp to consider, subdivision request and things like that. And so that was why we suggested implementing things like having semi-annual retreats for the Planning Commission, where we can get the training that we need so that we can become a more strategic committee. And that's also why we requested the review of so many elements on an annual or semi-annual basis, because we need that information if we're going to function in that strategic nature.
I think all of you are right. But I think the larger issue is when the city commission comes out with their strategic plan, it's based on the capital improvement programs that each department puts in front of them. So we, as a planning commission, we never get their capital improvement program, and they have no idea where the long range plan is. They just those departments say, we got to do this year. Do we have the money for it? And it goes to the city commission. The problem is, or the challenge is, we've never been privy to the capital improvement process to see is that really what the plan is calling for? And that's my 2 cents. I don't think anyone looks at the long range plan to say, okay, this is where we want to go. And then as a planning department, we don't have the information to budget, because that's at the city commission level. So we're just kind of like a lost committee that ends up rubber stamping subdivisions. So until we get involved in the capital improvement process to make sure that it's part of their plan, then we don't have a plan. It's now the strategic plan, which the city commission has, because they have all the pieces. That's my 2 cents.
And when
Well,
you
I think it's it. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Just to make sure I understand, Jamie, when you say capital improvement, you're talking about typically infrastructure type things like streets and sidewalks and that type of thing?
Yes, sir.
Parks, schools, all those facilities, trails.
Yeah.
Sanitation, yeah.
Well,
So
Jamie, what I would say back to that, and I don't disagree, I think you're absolutely correct in how you've assessed it. But that model, that means for making choices from year to year to year, in the past, that has left us to leave the strategic plan and our 2020 plan on the shelf to gather dust, and it was never referenced as a guidepost for making choices.
Agree 100%. So I think the city commission has done a good job over the last 4 to 10 years, let's just say that time frame, of trying not to be reactive to what's going on in the community and trying to become more proactive in terms of what's coming at them, in terms of growth, in terms of change, in terms of economics. So I think they're doing a great job in that respect. But I think if they started to look at us as a partner for them, someone that they can, what's the word? Where they can push off tasks to us so that they can focus their energies better. What's the word I'm looking for? Somebody else.
Delegate.
I see is
What's
there's
that?
there's better representation of the public. This appointed body can play that role as focused on how do these capital projects align with the long range planning efforts, and you can serve that function to assist the city commission, but you're also assisting. The comprehensive plan is based on a vision that's established through community input. And the reason why the state statute says that decisions should be based on the comprehensive plan is to provide security and confidence to the public that the plan that they provided input on and were part of the development of and the adoption of will be followed. And so that's the purpose of the comprehensive plan. And so if it makes sense that the planning commission would then follow up and make sure it's being implemented correctly. That just hasn't been happening.
Matt, do you feel like that's a commission? So obviously communication has to be increased around this. And I think now is the time to do it. If the city commission is going to adopt concurrent plans, a strategic plan and a bridge plan, so we've identified that there's an issue. Can we drill down on, is that a staff issue? Is that a city commission issue? And how, and after you answer that, how can the planning commission help facilitate some conversations that help get us back on track? Because I think we're all going in the same direction. Ergo, the strategic plan speaks a lot to the same issues that we've identified in the bridge plan, right? So I don't think we're two ships passing in the night. I think we gotta link up. How would you recommend that we do that? And
well, I mean, honestly, Clay, I feel like that's a more of a political conversation that doesn't that staff is not in a position to make a lot of comment on. I think that's maybe the role of you guys as appointed officials, working with the elected officials to come up with how those things are going to align, and then staff will be informed on which direction we're going here. What are the priorities, and what's involved in the strategic plan and making it successful. I think we're pretty well versed on the comprehensive plan and what needs to happen to make it successful with the input from the committee, the bridge plan committee, and yourselves. Feel pretty confident with that. So yeah, there just needs to be, I think the communication may need to happen. I don't know that staff can weigh in too much into those political waters too much.
Well, and likewise, I agree with what you're saying, Matt. I think there's two things that need to be addressed. One is to synchronize the commission's strategic plan with the comprehensive plan and make sure those things are aligned together and in synchronization with each other and complement each other. And then in a very similar way, I think there's some discussions that are yet to be had in terms of the role of the city commission and the role of the regional planning commission. And is there some change to happen with some of those roles and activities and functions?
I think we just need to ensure a partnership between the two. In all the years that I've been on the Planning Commission, I mean, the City Commission has been a totally separate entity except for the City Commissioner who serves on the Planning Commission. That was our only link to the City Commission. And I don't know if other chairs have had greater interaction with the City Commission or other commissioners may have. I know I have never had any interaction, to the extent that I think our retreat was the first time Jenny Brock even knew who I was and could have put a name with a face. So I think we really need to figure out ways to develop or to figure out how can we gain a partnership with the City Commission? What amount of partnership do they want? And then how can we create that partnership so that we are working in sync with one another? I think it's very confusing that this strategic plan suddenly appeared when we've been pushing this bridge plan for the last month or so. And I think we need to figure out how do we put the two together so that the public sees us as the united front rather than divided.
And
So I'm just going to add one more comment if I can. I think it goes back to the capital improvement task from the department heads. If the city commission would delegate that authority to us to say, okay, these are the capital improvement programs you want to implement FY 2021. Okay, great. How does that fit into our comprehensive plan, and or does it? And if it does, then we should push it onto the board, to the city commission, to say, okay, are there monies available for this particular program? That's the way it should kind of work. but it's not working that way because typically the response I've always gotten from commissioners is, well, you didn't have all the information. We had all the information. You didn't need to know about it. That's kind of how it's worked in the last decade.
Well, maybe we could work on creating a group that can reach out to the city commission, especially now that we're going to have some turnover in, the city commission in terms of a new commissioner and new mayor. And maybe we need to figure out how do we best reach out to them to discuss these concerns and to discuss these ideas and see whether or not we can't reach an agreement.
I think that's a great spot maybe to leave it. We're running up against the clock. But if you guys, want to kind of, discuss that and figure out how you want to move forward, I would certainly support that. As far as the rest of the presentation goes, it's all the same slides. The only, as far as the emerging themes and overarching topics, the only other thing is that I found out today we had been scheduled to present this to the city commission at their workshop next Monday. That was our goal. The city manager has stated that he wants to hold off on any presentation of the bridge plan until after the new year. And so what we're going to do is continue to move forward, fine tune the document, move forward to adoption by the planning commission December 8th at your next planning commission meeting. And then we'll work on formatting and creating a nice looking document that we can then present to the city commission for their consideration in January.
In the meantime, is there any value in trying to identify any significant divergence between the strategic plan and our long-range plan, our bridge plan?
I think if there is any conflict or competitive or recommendations that do not align, that we need to identify those very quickly.
How do we do
Does
that?
Was that in today's paper?
It was in the paper, yes.
Has the strategic plan actually been published?
I don't know.
Yes, it has. I'm going to go ahead and butt in. Sorry, but it's on the website on the left-hand side under government tab.
The city website?
Yes.
Larry, it's online now, I think.
Okay.
Okay, that wraps it up for me. Thank you guys. Let me know if you have any other thoughts, any other people you want to push this out to for public comment. We'd appreciate it. And as we learn more about, strategic plan, any of this stuff, we'll let you know.
Thank you, Matt.
Great job, Matt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I can get you all to bear with me just a minute, I'm going to switch over to the screen like normal and start the regular commission meeting. And Chairman Wild, you'll call it to order whenever the slide goes away, okay?
Gotcha. Are we good to go, Wendy?
Yes.
All right. I would like to call to order the November 10th, 2020 meeting of the Johnson City Regional Planning Commission. We are meeting virtually by order of the Governor of Tennessee due to the ongoing COVID pandemic. So, Wendy, I'm showing on my screen Commissioner Dagenhart instead of our agenda. Can you switch that for us?
I'm sorry, the agenda.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm showing I was showing Commissioner Dagenhart instead of the agenda. So I was trying to,
Matt
Well,
used it as the agenda.
I've got it now. Okay.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted me to do it or.
Nope. All right. We're going to begin with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask if Vice Chairman Cooper would please lead us in those.
Please join me. We gather to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Cooper. First item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda for the November 10th virtual meeting of the Johnson City Regional Planning Commission. Are there any changes or corrections to the proposed agenda? Then I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, I think I heard at least a motion and a second there. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next one is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Our previous meeting was held on October, I think it was 13th, 2020. It was also a virtual meeting. The minutes have been distributed. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes?
I move they be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for approval and a second. Again, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. There is no old business on the agenda, so we're going to move into new business. Item 6.1 is a preliminary plat request to approve the preliminary plat for Phase 2 of the Cottages at Greenwood Subdivision. And I'll hand it over to staff.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I will be handling this one. I think Matt is handling the two center items. Yes, the rezoning and the final plat, and I'll handle this one as well as the bond release. So allow me to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? It says Cottages at Greenwood Phase 2.
Yes.
We can.
Yes.
Okay, good deal. I'll go ahead and scroll down to the applicable. Well, I'll start here. This is Phase 2. It's about a 7.8 acre tract that is the remainder of the entirety of Cottages at Greenwood Subdivision, which is proposed here at the intersection of Greenwood Drive and Willow Springs Drive. You may recall that Phase 1 came to you recently with a request for final plat approval. As part of that final plat approval, there were several conditions, as well as a requirement from engineering that there be bond placement for completion of infrastructure. Part of the condition of approval for final plat for Phase 1 was that they needed to complete the sewer install here in this area. They ran into some rock in this area that was unanticipated, but they are getting through that rock and getting the sewer installed, and everything seems to be going well. So final plat for Phase 1 came through. This is the preliminary, pardon me, this is the request for preliminary plat approval for Phase 2, which will be the remaining lots, remaining 48 lots of the total 61 lot subdivision. Just as a little background, a little bit of history on this project. It first came to you in December of last year as a rezoning, request to rezone to the RP3, which is consistent zoning with the other residential zoning in the area, allowing for the smaller urban sized lots, reduced to no, or in some circumstances, no setback for the smaller urban sized lots. These are particularly 40-foot wide lots, and proposing a traditional 50-foot wide right-of-way coming in off of Willow Springs Drive, but then those rights-of-way do reduce down to 40 feet on Bryson Way. Forgive me. And then also here on Grider Court. That's actually the developer calling me, so he may be needing to get in on the public hearing. But again, this came to you last year as a rezoning. The rezoning was successfully approved. They came forward with the preliminary plat for phase 1. Then the construction plans come in, and those are approved at the administrative level. And then you see them out there doing the construction. And then they come in for the final plat, and that's what allows them to begin selling lots. For phase 2, they have yet to begin any construction. Again, this is the preliminary plat. This is basically where they show at the survey level that their proposed subdivision is consistent with the concept plan. So I can say from a staff perspective, this preliminary plat is consistent with the concept plan. They have yet to submit their construction drawings. If this is approved, they will submit construction drawings, and then they will get underway with construction of the streets and grading and utilities. And then upon completion of the infrastructure, that's when they come back to you again for request approval of the final plat. Presumably there will be another bond involved with the final plat for phase 2, but we don't know yet. That'll all happen when construction gets underway. So again, this is consistent with the concept plan. I do want to call out a couple of areas that staff caught. For example, I'm going to zoom in here on the center of the screen. You will see here, there is a little boomerang shaped hatched area in between lots 35 and 36. And that actually is an accidental carryover from the CAD work from the surveyor and engineer. That is not supposed to be there. That is a piece of the sewer easement that will show up later on the final plat. So please disregard that right there. And that's okay. This is not a final plat. This is not going to be recorded. Just pointing that out to you, that is not a floating easement out in the middle of lots 35 and 36. The other is the open space up here in the far northwest corner. Staff identified that, yes, there is legal access to this open space coming from down here at the intersection of Grider Court and Bryson Way if you were to traverse along the back of the lots. But we've asked them to provide a pedestrian opening here straight out to Bryson Way, and they have preliminarily agreed to do that as part of the final plat. There's no need for that to be mandated at this point, but they would do that as part of the final plat to come out like that. Otherwise, this is consistent with the concept plan, and staff is recommending approval. I'll turn it back to you, Chairwoman.
Preston, looking at lots between lots 52 and 53, is that a triangular additional space, or is that part of lot 53 that's shown on the preliminary plan?
No, what you're seeing is
what is
53. This is all one lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a survey call out.
Okay.
See, there's
okay.
another one over here.
Gotcha. Because I was wondering what the minimum lot size was, and
Right. No,
whether those
that
would
is
meet it.
all of 53 is right here in this bold line. Same thing over here. 55 is a similar shaped lot.
Understand.
This, so yes, those PC3s and PTs and PC6s, those are survey call outs.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes.
What about on the other side of Bryson Way?
This right here, okay, so yes, this was an area that we had identified. This is leftover. I I wouldn't say leftover. It is wider right of way than you would normally find. I did have a conversation with the designer about this particular situation. Their concept plan did have the property lines coming out to the edge of the back of the sidewalk. However, in this particular case with this particular builder prefers to have, where possible, lots that are perpendicular and rectangular as best as they can make them. Understanding that over here we're 35 and 36. These are a little bit longer lots and they've got a curved frontage. We recognize that. But over here, if they were to try to do this same thing that they've done with 35 and 36, they most likely would lose a lot. And so what they've done is brought it up and then just essentially created an extra green space in here. I did have a conversation with them about driveways, making sure that there would not be conflict with driveways. Ultimately, that's a decision to be made by the builder, but one that we would coordinate with them through the final plat process.
And what about maintenance on that area?
It would be, the maintenance would be the responsibility of the fronting property owner. So these two lots, 43 and 44, would be responsible out to the sidewalk, but because they have a little bit wider area there, it eventually, or I should say ultimately, would come down to coordination between those two lots and any future HOA.
How would that change if we've asked for access to that open space from Bryson Way?
If yes, when that gets provided here through, then at that time, I need to have a conversation with Public Works about their maintenance of that, of a portion of that area. But yes, that will be a conversation that we will have during construction drawings and prior to final plat. Again, with the reminder that this is coming back to you as a final plat. This is at this stage just a preliminary.
Preston, may I say something? This is Alan Cantrell.
Oh, absolutely, Alan.
That triangle just occurred to me, could be placed in an easement. It's still public right of way, but we could allow them to overlay it with an easement that would go to the homeowners association and put the responsibility for maintenance of it to them, but they're going to have the same responsibility for all the open space that you see. It would be no different, except that it's public right of way underneath it. And the driveways would pass through that easement, and as well as the path to that open space.
That's a good idea. That's a great idea.
Oh, we're talking about triangles, Preston. What is this sewer easement on the right-hand curve of Bryson Way?
This right
Can you
here,
address that?
Attached, yes.
that was what I addressed at the beginning, that is to be disregarded. That is accidental. That was that's a CAD error on the part of the designer. That was not intended to be there, and is requested to be disregarded. That's part of the public sanitary sewer easement that will show up on the final plat later.
Yeah, I apologize. I obviously wasn't paying attention. Is Bryson Way going to be public or private?
All of this is going to be a public street. Grider Court and Bryson Way will all be public streets.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask Alan a question, please?
Absolutely.
Alan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Given that Grider Way and Bryson Way are both terminating streets inside the development, what's your opinion of the T structure of the turnarounds?
We, about inside of 10 years ago, we enlarged the top of the T. T's are allowed. They used to be smaller and they were harder for the garbage trucks and other vehicles, larger vehicles that might service the neighborhood to be able to turn. The one on the left meets the standards minimum, and it's still large. It's over 100 feet from one end to the other. The one on the right is a little unusual in that it is longer, but that's not a problem as long as you can turn around. And so a garbage truck going in to pick up the containers for those lots would certainly be able to turn around on that T. So we have had no problem with this and didn't make any comment.
So you're saying they can turn around as though it were a circle?
Yes, it requires you to pull in, turn left, back up, and then turn left again to get out. So it's a
Okay.
pull forward, back up maneuver instead of a trip around a circle.
Okay.
The larger vehicles can't make the circle in one trip anyway, even with the circle. The circle is only a 40-foot diameter. And so when a large garbage truck goes into a circle, they're not able to go all the way around and out in one maneuver. They'll come in and go as far as they can, then back up and then go on out.
Okay, thank you.
These are fairly standard. In fact, these in the previous community where I came from, we call these hammerheads. These are standard normal subdivision provisions for dead end streets. There's another version that looks like a Y, but both, or I should say all three, the Y, the hammerhead, and the cul-de-sac are all provided for as options in our subdivision regulations.
Okay. Are there additional questions of staff at this time?
No, ma'am.
Okay, given that, I'm going to open it up to the public hearing. Do we have any callers on the line, Wendy?
No, ma'am, but I just put the information up, so you might want to give it just a minute.
Okay.
While we're waiting, this kind of goes into the green open space thing that we were talking about a little bit in the bridge plan. But when we sign off on these plats and approve them, is that considered, these open spaces are not dedicated to the city? They are still going to remain the responsibility and property of either the developer or the future HOA whenever that turnover happens. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
They are not dedicated for public park land or.
Dr. Pardon. Okay. Yeah.
Preston, what's the process of inspecting that open space pre, during, and post development to make sure that that's been adhered to? Who's checking in on that?
Engineering as well as the development staff, both departments. We have a variety of inspectors that are out in the field looking at different things for different purposes. But yes, we have to ensure that they do not, and generally that's not an issue where they begin to develop on the promised open space, but it is something that we do ensure. You know, there's another conversation here, and I'll just touch on it while we're waiting on folks to call in, but there's this question that came up right after I came on board. I came on board in November of 18, and in the winter of 19, there was a conversation had about the difference between just general open space, which is lately has been really just leftover land counted as open space. And then, you know, what is recreational open space, and when should open space be more usable? When should it include some recreation element? Does that recreation element need to be passive or active? At what point do we begin looking at open space aligning with waterways and other environmental features? So the reason why I'm touching on all that is, you know, now's not a time to get into a heavy legislative conversation, but I will say that I would like to have that policy conversation with you all in the near future. that I think that there are ways we can improve our open space regulations to provide a better amenity, one that can benefit the developer, but also ultimately benefits the residents.
I think that's great, Preston. You know, as I look at this preliminary plat, I could see a number of these lots and mom and pop homeowner eventually encroaching upon those open spaces if there's not a permanent feature, whether it's a walking path, a fence, some sort of landscaping that dedicates that. I mean, I think that's natural for folks that, you know, all of a sudden there's a there's a storage building that's sitting in the back corner of my lot that's impacting the open space. And that's why I was asking about the inspection period of how are we looking at this? And I really appreciate you speaking to the fact that there may be some additional regulation up front as to what that open space looks like, because I think over time that some of that could be lost.
Sure. Well, and I think, and I appreciate your additional commentary because it helps better explain, I think, what I misunderstood. And that is, we do a series of inspections as this subdivision gets under construction, but then at some point, all the inspections are done and the buildings are done.
That's
and
right.
It's a neighborhood, and you've got folks living there, and all of the developers and all the builders and all the planners are all gone. And so at that point, who is maintaining and ensuring that the open space is not being overtaken?
Mm-hmm.
Well, number one, then it becomes a code enforcement issue. And we deal with those issues every day, where code enforcement finds illegally erected accessory structures, lean-tos, all those kinds of things. So those are normal circumstances and something that code enforcement can easily handle. I think that I want to, be careful how I address additional regulation as it relates to open space. I think what I really want to focus on in the future is just having a policy conversation with you all, having this discourse with the development community as well about how can we provide for a better open space environment and not just simply be leftover land.
Yeah, not just leaving the dog lot to the neighborhood that no one can use.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that conversation would be welcome. It's certainly something that's come up in discussion before, and I think I'd like to see it readdressed in the future.
Yes, ma'am.
And
Okay.
beneficial for everybody. I think the developer as well, from their side.
I'll just
Alright.
quickly add that there's an opportunity with the bridge plan for that to be a recommendation, just to set it up as a priority for us to tackle later.
Yes. All right, Wendy, has anybody called in and wishing to speak in the public meeting?
No, ma'am.
All right, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public meeting officially. Is there any additional discussion or questions amongst commissioners?
Would the commissioners like to see the diagram of a T intersection from our subdivision regs? If not, we won't go there.
Not unless you show me a garbage truck backing up in it.
I can't do that tonight.
If you show me how the garbage truck can back up.
It's a 3-point turn.
Yeah, sure.
It is. It's just a simple 3-point turn.
I'd hate to live at the end of it and see how many of those 3 points enter my yard.
It's the same thing they have to do in my dead end in North Hills.
Yeah. Yep. So, all right. If there is no additional discussion, then I am looking for a motion from somebody to either recommend approval or denial of this request.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat as presented for the approval of 48 detached single-family lots, also known as Phase 2 of the Cottages at Greenwood subdivision.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table for the approval of the preliminary plat as presented. Is there any further discussion? All right, then I don't see Nicole, so who's calling our roll tonight?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Your name isn't, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Now I see you. I didn't see you in our list before. I'm sorry, Nicole.
That's okay. No problem.
Okay.
All right. Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
And Chairwoman Wild.
Yes.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, motion passes. Item number 2 under new business is, whoops, I got to go to a smaller screen so I can see my request here. There we go. Okay. Item number 2 is a rezoning, and it is a request to rezone a portion of 3323 McKinley Road to prepare for a future subdivision. Staff, you're on.
Thank you. Sorry, I was muted there for a second. Yeah, so this 2 lots here were annexed back in June of 2003. The current zoning is shown on the left there. It's R2, which includes a single family home, but it also bleeds down to the rear into a driveway and parking area for the neighboring mobile home, manufactured home park, which is zoned RM5. It's owned by the same property owner who is looking to subdivide the property so that the single family home can be sold separately. And in order to do that, to shift those lot lines, this rezoning would need to occur. And there's kind of a couple of moving parts here. One, the reduction in the lot size would require it to be rezoned from R2 to R2C, that being the single family home site, to be able to meet the minimum lot size. Once those property lines are shifted to allow for the subdivision of the single family home, then the remainder would stay R2 unless we were to rezone it tonight. And so that's the way those lot lines have been drawn. It also provides an opportunity to clean up the bleed over onto the manufactured home site. This display here, this goes into a little more detail. It's 0.34 acres of R2 with the single family home on it. That would be reduced down to 0.19 acres. That meets the minimum lot size for R2C. The RM5 would expand from 0.59 acres to 0.74. And that just the portion in the green would be the part that's going from R2 and would be added to the what is outlined in blue, the light blue. Neighborhood meeting was held on last Wednesday. Here's a few photos of the site. You can kind of see the layout there. And then this is the proposed minor subdivision. So this would be approved administratively after, but it's necessary that the rezoning is approved before the subdivision can be approved. But as they've presented it, it does meet all the requirements for staff to approve this minor subdivision. So that's before and after shown there. The after is serving as the concept plan. And so we've met all our requirements for a rezoning. So staff is recommending approval. It meets all the requirements of the zoning code. It allows for this minor subdivision to occur. It eliminates the potential for a split zoning, separates the single family use with the current, which currently extends into the driveway and parking area for the manufactured home park. So it achieves many things. The grand scheme of things, from a non-technical use of the word, it is a, and a technical use of the word, this is a minor subdivision. And so staff recommends approval.
And the surrounding county area is A1?
I do not know the neighboring zoning from the county.
Can't remember where I picked that up.
That may have been in your staff report submitted by Will Ryder. He prepared that staff report and submitted it.
Matt, was anybody in attendance at the neighborhood
There's
meeting?
no one attended the neighborhood meeting.
Okay, and have there been any calls or emails received in reference to this?
No calls, concerns, anything. Usually sometimes we'll get a, question about why the sign is out there, but we've had nothing on this one. I'll just quickly say that, there is septic at this site. That was something that kind of threw a wrench into it a bit, but the city is prepared to provide sewer to this property and sign off on this subdivision plat. The annexation, when it was annexed, the plaintiff services said that sewer would be provided as development, as needed for development, to accommodate development. So that is something that the city's committed to, and they would move forward with signing the plat, saying that they would provide sewer in the future.
Thank you.
So is that sewer provision to the residents and the secondary, or is it just to the one property?
It's
to the one.
To the residential property. I'm sorry. It's to the single family residential property. Well, anything that's in the city would be able to be tapped into. Water, and Travis may be on the line. I think, yeah, he is. And so he can speak to that in a little more detail.
Yeah, this is Travis Solinger with Water and Sewer Department. Yes, the plat as it's shown there, we'd be signing for both lots. Both are in the city, and they have been for, if I remember correctly, they've been in the city about 17 years. And so we are making a commitment at this time to provide service within a reasonable period of their request.
So does the sewer front the property on McKinley Road?
No, the nearest sewer line is actually over in Sunrise Valley. So this would require an extension. We would probably, due to the magnitude of a conventional gravity system, just to serve this area, we would probably put them on an individual pump, which would kind of be a somewhat temporary solution for sewer service that we would hope to phase out in the future with gravity service. But it would pump over to Sunrise Valley. If they were to call tomorrow to get this connected, that's how we would go about it.
What's the distance you're talking about?
I don't know right off the top of my head. I'm thinking it's probably in the I'm thinking it's in the 1,000-foot range over to Sunrise Valley. It's the next street to the east.
Okay, are there additional questions of staff at this time?
I think it was Commissioner Cooper that asked, but I think unless I'm looking at it wrong, the surrounding county zoning is R1 and R2.
Yeah, that's right. I found that. Thanks.
Okay, Wendy, can we go ahead and show the screen to open the public meeting in case there is anybody who would like to provide input that way? I want to officially open it, and we can continue our discussion while we wait a moment.
So this property's been in the city for 17 years.
That's correct.
Somebody knew somebody, didn't they?
Yeah, it's a bit of a head scratcher of how it came to be. I don't have a lot of history on it, but it does seem a bit unusual given the location and the use. But yeah, June 2003.
Hey Matt, do you mind can you pull up the and this isn't an annexation at this point, but do you have available the city zoning map that you could share your screen with? And also, do you have the future land use map that shows I mean, or you can just comment on, is this
Yeah.
rezoning in line with future land use in that corridor on McKinley?
Yeah, and Wendy, if you can, let me provide a screen share.
And as you're pulling that up, do you know which property the owner intends to sell?
The single family.
Okay, so potentially that new owner could, in fact, request the city sewer service fairly soon.
That's correct.
17 years. So it sounds like we need to be prepared that could happen.
That's correct. So I will.
Matt, while you're looking for that, is the road, and I might have missed this earlier, but is the road that accesses the rest of the trailers or the other lots, does that then become a private drive, or are we having to service that?
No, it's a private drive. It's a driveway.
All right.
It's not a private drive, it's a driveway.
It is a driveway.
Yes. Is this what this is? So here's your zoning, current zoning, and you kind of see the surrounding county. That's current zoning. Turn that off and put a proposed land use, and you'll see it's all residential.
Okay. That's helpful. And I'm sure you checked that. That's helpful for me at least to see. Because I see some businesses just kind of dotted along that corridor right there that have been in place for some time, I'm sure.
Yeah, that area is can be, an interesting variety of uses out there. And when those things have popped up where you have less restrictive land uses in the county, especially going back further in time, and then they come into the city, they're annexed into the city, and so then they may not always align with kind of the vision of something like the transect that we talked about earlier in the bridge plan. But that type of variety of uses is prevalent out here. Then you have new development popping up that's maybe a little more orderly, higher density than very low density rural and commercial and apartments, and it's really all over the place.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, Wendy, has anybody called in wishing to speak? Nope. All right, then we're going to officially close the public hearing on this item. And I'm going to open it either for discussion amongst commissioners or for a motion.
So is the city going to be responsible to bring sewer to this new property owner if that single residence sells?
Yes.
The city has been responsible to bring sewer to this property for the last 17 years. That was part of the plan of services. It just hasn't occurred yet. There has not been a request, and there has not been any provision because they're not any closer than 1,000 feet or so, give or take. They haven't been required to connect, and they haven't requested to connect.
And the
there hasn't
property
been
owner,
any development pressure requiring the city to do it.
and the property owner wants to reduce the size of the single resident lot for what reason?
To be able to sell the single family lot.
Matt, will you go back to the map? Thank you.
He can't do that presently?
Not without selling off the parking for the mobile home park. You also have some issues with, transportation access over the two property lines.
No.
I'm just going to ask a question. Do we even want this property? Honestly,
It's in the city.
We don't have a choice.
Can't really,
Well-
this is not a question of de-annexation. I think what we're looking at here is an opportunity to clean up the property, to get the property lines corrected, and to get zoning corrected. We've got We've got a manufactured home park that's partially zoned R2 and partially on another piece of property. And so there's an opportunity here to do that.
I see what the opportunity is. I don't know that I call it a great opportunity. That's all.
I mean,
I'd like to make not an offer, but a
Motion.
Motion. Golly, geez, can you tell I'm tired? For 3323 McKinley Road, rezoning from an R2 to an R2C, and then the additional property from an RC to an RM5.
Does that have to be in two motions?
It can be a single motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table for the rezoning as presented by staff to R2C and RM5 of the current property at 3323 McKinley Road. Is there additional discussion? All right, hearing none. Nicole, would you please call the roll?
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
and Chairwoman Wild.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, the next item on our agenda is a final plat, and it is a request to approve the Kilby property subdivision final plat.
Thank you. This is in the county. It is at the base of Buffalo Mountain. It falls within our planning region and therefore is subject to our subdivision regulations. This is a request for 2 lots to go to 4 lots. It involves a consolidation down here at the corner, but otherwise this large tract, which actually has multiple homes on it, would be subdivided into 4 lots. And the 2 lots in the middle that are not colored yellow would actually be expanded. So they are apparently selling off some of the property in the rear. So here's the before and after as it's shown. Lot 1 down here on the corner of Kilby and High Ridge Road is 1.16 acres and has Catbird Creek running through it across the corner. This is where you have a consolidation with a lot at the corner. Lot 2 would separate those 2 houses, and it would be just over half an acre. The lot directly behind lot 2 would be untouched. It would remain the same, no changes there. Lot 3 would be, and lot 4 are out of this larger piece, vacant piece over here. Lot 3 would be 1.26 acres, lot 4 just over an acre. And then these 2 in the middle would be expanded back to meet the existing property line with this property in the back. Just some quick pictures here. This shows the larger vacant portion of lots 4 and 3. The red arrows are just calling out the photograph. The purple arrow is showing the direction that the photo is taken in. These are the 2 center lots that have houses on them. This is at the corner looking up Kilby Road. And then this is further down Kilby Road looking kind of inward at the driveway on that serves those 2 properties at the end of the road. The proposed final plat meets all the requirements for Washington County zoning and our subdivision regulations, and staff recommends approval.
Matt, I have a question for you. Out of curiosity, why is the lot between lot 2 and 3 that's already existing and the 2 lots in the middle, they didn't want to try to clean that up and make a nice straight line to enlarge one and take a little piece out of the other? Am I making sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, they certainly could have. We saw several iterations of this, and mainly we're working with them to make sure they met all the requirements of the subdivision regulations. That change, while it may have been a little bit cleaner for one lot, would have maybe made it not as clean for lot 3. Could have been some topography issues as well. And so there was no requirement that they need to do that. So we just.
And is there current access to that lot between lot 2 and 3?
Good catch.
How do you get there?
This was created some time ago. This would not be able to be approved today. They did what is called a Moody boot and took a minimum 25 feet of frontage, which is what's required under Washington County, and then took a narrow strip all the way back here. We would require 50 feet for a flag lot now. And we do not interpret the subdivision regulations or the zoning code the same way that they were interpreted at the time of the creation of this lot. And in fact, that strip is so small that they don't even have a driveway that actually accesses there. That driveway goes to lot 2. The driveway for this lot comes straight through lot 2 and comes back here.
So is there an easement for the driveway for that old existing lot?
That's a good question. I believe that's what's called out here. This is not a good copy of it. What I got was a scan, but it looks like they've added that note right here. And is Alan still on? Not sure if Alan's here. There's Lawrence. Maybe Alan's in there.
Yeah,
Alan, do you remember if that was a revision that was called out?
I'm sorry. Lawrence and I had a separate discussion going. I didn't hear what you were discussing. Talking about the Moody boot, I think.
Well, we passed the Moody boot and went on to the provision of an easement across lot 2 to get to this unnumbered lot that's behind lot 2.
There's a driveway there already, which means that there's probably a prescribed easement, meaning nothing's ever been put down in writing. It's just been established by use and putting gravel on the ground and driving on it. And so with the replat, we've required that they actually plat an easement along that driveway to giving the right for the lot in the rear to get out across the lot in the front, rather than using this little corridor at the top that you talked about.
Right.
His access is actually on that shared driveway. And so there are notes on the plat giving access. There's always been, in all iterations, a note there that there's an access easement, but we wanted it more defined as to how wide is it. It's critical to know how wide it is.
Thank you. And there is a note on here as well regarding the shared access easement, that it shall be owned and maintained by the property owners. And so that note is on here.
Hey, Matt, is that a gravel driveway or is that paved?
I believe it is paved. I have a photo. It is paved.
Okay, thank you.
And, gravel is a form of pavement technically, but this is asphalt. But again, nothing is changing with that lot. As Alan stated, a note's been added to clarify that easement across there because lot 2 is changing, but the lot behind it is not affected by this directly.
But did I understand Alan to say that it would be helpful to have the easement designated with a width of the driveway easement?
They took care of that in the note.
Are there additional questions of staff at this time? All right, let's go ahead and officially open the public hearing again in case anybody wishes to provide input, and we can continue our discussion as we allow for the public to call in if there are additional comments to be made. Matt, is this all one family that owns this? I think I saw where it said Kilby heirs. So,
Yes, except for the 2 lots in the center. That's my understanding.
okay. So the lot that they're driving across to get to the unchanged lot, they're relatives. They're not going to get angry with each other, and one of them's going to decide you can't drive across my property anymore.
No guarantee
At
of
least for
that.
the moment.
Okay.
Was there a public meeting?
Not for a final plat.
Okay.
Again, when I mentioned earlier, the technical term, this would not be, this would be a major subdivision, not a minor subdivision, but in the grand scheme of things, from a non-technical term, this is a minor subdivision. There's no streets being built, no public, stormwater or utilities or anything like that. So this is just the division of land.
But the property owners have been notified, is that correct?
There is no requirement for other than just our notices that go out for the planning commission meeting.
So the 2 folks in the middle who've now got more property were not notified.
That's not our responsibility. I'm assuming that they were contacted and hopefully paid for something. I don't know. But that's a civil matter, not something that involves the cities requiring some additional notice.
The property owners involved in the plat.
Yeah, there had to be a replat.
Well, that's
right?
true. They all would have to sign it for it to be official.
Right. The property owners all involved in the plat have to be part of the plat application process.
That's
Okay, that sounds better.
Thank you.
No, we just changed your lot line and didn't tell you.
Yeah.
They do before it's official. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily at this point. They have to sign it when they bring us a final version, but until it's approved, they hadn't brought it to us.
Gotcha.
But before Commissioner Dagenhart would sign it, those signatures would have to be on there. Yes. Sorry, I should have clarified that.
All right, Wendy, is there anybody who has called in on the public hearing for this?
No, ma'am.
All right, let's officially close the public meeting then, hearing no one wishing to speak. And I will open the table for either additional comments or for a motion on this item.
I will move that we approve the subdivision final plat as presented, subdividing the property. I'm trying to look to see how I'm going to identify it. The Kilby property subdivision.
That's correct.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for, the motion is to approve the Kilby property subdivision final plat as presented. Is there additional discussion? Hearing none, Nicole, would you please call the roll?
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
and Chairwoman Wild.
Yes.
Motion approved as presented.
Okay. The final item of new business this evening is a bond release. It is a request to release the remaining $10,000 of a $31,000 cash bond for Park Place Phase 3 subdivision.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And if the board will allow, I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Can everybody see the GIS image on the screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Let me zoom out just to give reference here. Of course, everybody can see the lake over here on the right-hand side of the screen as it's loading here. You'll see Winged Deer Park and you'll see Bristol Highway. So if you were to come from Winged Deer Park up Carroll Creek Road, and then in the bend of Carroll Creek Road right here is Park Place subdivision. So At the end of Harbor and Oliver Approach is phase 3 of Park Place subdivision, here in the bend of the river, bend of the lake. December of last year, December of 2019, you all approved the final subdivision plat for phase 3 with a bond requirement of $31,000. This summer, July of 2020, you approved a reduction in that $31,000 cash bond down to $21,000. So there's 10 remaining, and we received an approval letter and notification from engineering that the final remaining 10 is good to go and can be handed back to the developer. All requirements have been met, documents submitted, so staff submits this to you for your approval.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions of staff? Are those waterfront lots right now, Preston?
Yes, ma'am. And they will be.
And is there water there?
Now, I think aren't they starting to very slowly bring it back up?
Yeah, they brought it up about 5 feet.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't need a public hearing for this one, correct?
No.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the release of the bond of the remaining $10,000 bond and a second. Is there additional discussion?
Dating pool with everyone, and now it's
All right, Nicole, please call the roll.
Vice Chairman Cooper. Oh, I'm sorry, Vice Chairman Cooper.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
and Chairwoman Wild.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right. Moving on to other, we have discussion topic. Is there any additional discussion that we need to have tonight, given that we had a pre-meeting with some extensive discussion beforehand?
Yes, ma'am. I've got a couple of items, if you don't mind.
Certainly.
Yes, I know that you all had a robust conversation there on the bridge plan. If you would allow, and I know I was not there for, well, really 98% of that meeting and heard the last little bit of the conversation. Commissioner Calhoun may have already mentioned this, but something I guess I just would encourage us to hold in our pockets as we move forward with the bridge plan and any other policy matters. That is that the strategic plan for and from the City Commission did not just happen. That has been in the works for some time now. The document that was presented was a compilation and a finished document of work that had occurred over the last, I'd say, 18 months. I remember the kind of genesis of the strategic plan after I first got here in early 2019. And so I would just suggest and say that was not something that just came about, something that the City Commission has been working on for some time. But I do think that it can and should complement the comprehensive plan. I think that the strategic plan will always be a document that comes from your elected officials, from the City Commission, and that the comprehensive plan will always be something that should be led by the Planning Commission. I think that those two things can coexist. And so as they modified their strategic plan over time for economic development purposes, for capital improvement purposes, those can be done in conjunction with updates to the comprehensive plan, but that they can be done simultaneously, and there's no need for there to ever be any kind of conflict. Not suggesting that you all were worried about conflict, but that really you all are the protector and the leader of the comp plan, while they are the leader and protector of the strategic plan. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarity there.
I think our concern, Preston, is to make sure that we are coordinated together, and at least whether it's out of ignorance or us not paying attention, we certainly weren't aware that there was that work was being done on the strategic plan, and kind of like I think it basically just kind of caught us off guard. So how do we make sure now that those two plans are out on the table? How do we make sure that we're properly coordinated?
Sure, that's the responsibility of the department heads as well as the administration. The city manager and the two assistant city managers work for the city commission, and so they are our CEO, or I should say, Mr. Peterson is our CEO, and he is our leader and remains in constant contact with the commission. And so it is our responsibility as department heads to be communicating up and down with the city manager and with the assistant city managers in terms of all of these policy conversations. It is my responsibility to be pulling on Mr. Peterson when I can, and at the appropriate times to pull information down from him to be able to share with you all, and then conversely to be able to push information up to the city commission through Mr. Peterson. So yes, that is my responsibility. That would be the responsibility of Mr. Witherspoon and Mr. Pinzola and other department heads. So.
Well, let me also say, you probably will get a better city commissioner, a representative of the planning commission now that can help out with that.
Oh, no.
Oh, please.
Not.
Oh,
No,
please.
no.
Yeah. No, actually, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to be here the last hour. Got some other things going on here, but and I'll be happy to take any comments back, and maybe Dr. Wild, maybe you and I can visit before the next city commission meeting. If there's any comments relative to the strategic plan or its genesis or anything like that, I'll be happy to take those back.
Yes, that would be.
It has been in like an 18. I mean, I think Preston, you and I came very at almost the same time to Johnson City and the city commission. And I know this has been something that the mayor and all of us actually have really pushed to try to get a strategic plan that is fairly clear, and also a strategic plan that is measurable with this is what we want to do and this is how we know if we're doing it or not. And I cannot count the number of meetings that have been had about this, and also a lot of those meetings have been reported in the press very clearly too.
Thank you, Commissioner. Dr. Wild, if I could, I have two other things. One, a little short item that I wasn't prepared to jump into, but I really want to do it on behalf or really for Commissioner Pavlich. And it was based on one of the items earlier. Commissioner Pavlich, you had begun to express concern over the McKinley Road rezoning. And I applaud Matt for wanting to keep us moving. I know that's something that we've been talking about with Dr. Wild about having efficient and quick meetings when we can. But I don't want you to ever feel cut off, and so I wanted to jump back, if I could, for 1 minute to that rezoning and to hopefully address something based on what I heard you expressing concern over. So here we go. I'm trying to go to McKinley Road. Come on, Preston.
Hey, Preston, first of all, I did not feel that way at all.
Okay, good. All right. Well, there we go. So allow me to zoom in here for 1 second. Number one, and really this is for your benefit, but also for the benefit of anybody else who may have been concerned. The road itself is already in the city. I think it would be a different conversation if this was truly a donut hole, but McKinley Road itself is already in the city. I think the other is, yes, the request for sewer has not been made. Now it's been made all these years later. So there's an obligation to provide that. And water and sewer has as they always do when able, happily stated that they can provide that. I think the other, and this is really what I wanted to focus on, is that in this particular area, as we see growth out in this area, which we are seeing growth in the southwest part of the city, that I would anticipate and hope that we continue to get annexations in this area. So I think that what we see here now as a small little donut will be gone in short order. That's the hope.
I understand.
Okay. So just wanted to provide that. Finally, if I could, Dr. Wild, I want to provide an update on, and this was based on a conversation that the legislative committee had regarding the Mountain Home rezoning study. So if you recall, that was first considered by the legislative committee roughly 60 days ago, and brought to the commission as a concept to take on a rezoning study in the Mountain Home neighborhood, Watauga, Lamont, Highland, that area. And so staff had indicated that we were going to go and have a neighborhood meeting in the neighborhood and try to extract some commentary and concerns, ideas, objections, all of the above. And so we did that on Saturday, October 24th. So I've got a couple of slides here that I want to provide, or that I want to share. So hopefully everybody can see this. We set up a tent in the parking lot, in the Founders Park parking lot, right next to Commerce Street. So if you could see through the window of the tent here, you would see Model Mill on the other side of the state of Franklin. And so the neighborhood, the Mountain Home neighborhood, is back to my back as I stand here taking this picture. Rain was forecasted for that day, so I'm glad we were able to get a tent. Also tends to make everybody comfortable, and we had plenty of room for social distancing. But really what we wanted to do was show maps of the area, both the current zoning and what we were thinking about doing. And then also to try to tug on folks, tug on their thoughts and emotions and feelings as to mixed use zoning. One of the first things that they did as they came in, they put a sticker where they live. So that was good to be able to know who was there, had a little coffee and donuts for them. And then as they entered the tent, like I said, they would see the current zoning, the zoning proposal, and then a couple of other boards that would jog their thoughts and feelings on mixed use zoning and mixed use development. So I'll zoom in on a couple of those boards. Part of what we were asking is, up as you travel down Watauga from state of Franklin heading towards Main and Market, would there be interest for conversion of some of those homes, adaptive reuse, or even new construction of neighborhood scale, 2-story mixed use? Is there a desire for a corner store or for a coffee shop along that particular corridor? Is there a desire for additional variety of housing? You've heard Matt talk a lot about, and that's a policy conversation that we really need to dive into soon regarding missing middle housing. Another was just some visual preference. Would you like this along West Watauga? Mixed use zoning can act as transitional zoning, trying to, again, kind of jog some of their thoughts and feelings about the difference in mixed use zoning versus single use zoning. So I think it was a very successful meeting. Unfortunately, in the day of COVID and with rain, we didn't have a whole lot of folks. You can see the dots of residents that came down and joined us, but we did have some non-residents come and visit us. One thing I was really excited about is that the owner of the pool store came, because part of the consideration for his property is to downzone it from heavy industrial to commercial. Anytime you downzone, that's always a concern from a property rights perspective, but he was very supportive of the concept, really is excited about, us looking at this area. And so, so we were really glad to see him there. So that said, next steps for the zoning study, we wanted to give you a little bit of a reminder there, or a report on what happened with the neighborhood meeting. What we'd like to do is ask the legislative committee to convene using one of your normal spots, which would be Wednesday the 2nd. So Dr. Wild and Matt and Nicole, if you all would put that on your calendars, like to request that the legislative committee convene at that 5 o'clock spot on the 2nd to discuss the next steps of the rezoning. Matt also has some great ideas for some things that we need to do to tweak the MX1 zoning to really improve it. So this would involve not only a rezoning, but also a text amendment. And then would ask the committee to shoot this over to you as a full board at your next meeting on the 8th. And then if a positive recommendation comes out on the 8th, then we would be off and running through the ordinance process with the city commission.
All right, I've added that to my calendar, so I'll coordinate with Matt and make sure we get that out to the proper commissioners. Of course, anybody is always welcome to attend.
Absolutely, as long as we don't have a full board meeting. Always need to make sure
we can't
that
have a quorum.
Right, always need to keep it at a committee level. The
I can't recall any time when we have had more people attend than we needed.
The only other thing that I would really like to add at this time is, and I don't know for sure whether or not she was properly introduced, but you've seen in one of your squares here with us this evening, Miss Whitney Hodges, who is a planner, is a local government planner who is joining the city as a consultant. And so she is providing consulting services, helping us while we are in the search for a development coordinator. As you know, Hassan left us and went off to the West Coast, so to speak, went to the Memphis area. And so we wish him well. But in the interim, with things being as busy as they are, had a conversation with the city manager, and he was very supportive of us bringing 2 consultants on board. So we do have 2 that are under contract. Whitney is one of those, and very talented planner. Spent many years at the town of Huntersville, North Carolina. Actually lives in Charlotte. So I think she's in Charlotte right now. She's either in Charlotte or she's in Asheville. Yeah, she's in Asheville. Has family in Asheville. And the other consultant resides in Knoxville. And so they've both been very helpful and already been jumping into it. And so they bring different talents and strengths to the organization, but very excited about them being here. And I'm glad that Whitney wanted to be a part of the meeting tonight. So, and in fact, she's a native of Johnson City. So, so she has a vested interest in being a consultant here. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, Matt introduced Whitney early on, and she also gave us introduction herself about her background and where she was from and everything. So glad to have her on board.
I will hush then.
Come to the meeting on time, Preston. Just teasing.
I did.
You would have heard all this. That's okay. All right. Are there other topics for discussion this evening? Okay, Larry, I'm going to look to trying to find a time with you so that we can have a discussion of information I'd like you to take back to the city commission, if you don't mind. And is this Larry's last meeting with us?
It is.
Oh,
Hmm.
oh,
You'll get somebody, you'll get somebody new.
oh, well, I don't know if I speak for everyone. I have a suspicion I do, but we are very grateful for the service you've provided, and we're going to miss you quite a bit.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just don't send us Commissioner Hunter.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I think it may be a rite of passage that the brand new commissioner always goes to the planning commission. Is that right? Is that what you used to?
That's the newbie rule right there.
I've given Aaron the heads up. So you may be resigning tonight after he sees what the work is.
Once he
No,
hears
he'll be fine, or whoever comes will be fine.
Well, we thank you for all your service and all that you've provided to us. It's been
Absolutely.
great. So we're going to miss you. All right. Is there any other discussion?
I move we adjourn.
Is anybody going to second that?
Second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Meeting ended at 7:17
Thank y'all.
p.m. Thanks, everybody.